We're leaving tomorrow, Dad. I sold your beach house. So, IT these. This is what my son said as if he were speaking of groceries. What he didn't know was that by morning, everything he believed about me, about that house, would collapse in ways he never saw coming. Before you judge, before you pick a side. In the middle of the road, I stood frozen as Mr. Jenkins's car sped by. The flash of hit like and subscribe, where stories such as this one not only entertain but also warn you that I recall the exact spot where my son uttered the phrase. These words struck me harder than a punch to the gut, although my son said them casually, as if he were reporting that he'd finished his breakfast. However, his flickering eyes told me something. He hadn't realized the implications of his statement. I had been awake for hours, sitting on the old leather couch in the living room, fixated on the light seeping into the room from the windows. The ocean breeze was drifting in from the sliding doors of the apartment, carrying the familiar scent of salt water and pine trees. It was serene, almost a little too serene. My son, Jake, was strangely quiet that day. He normally bursts in with energy, notions, gripes, with something. But that day, it was as if he'd been holding on to a secret that was too much for him to handle. Then came that phrase that sounded like he was reading from the weekly grocery list. We're leaving tomorrow, Dad. I sold your beach house. I stood frozen. My heart skipped a beat, my gut twisted. The beach house was more than property. It was more than a destination for vacations. It was full of memories. My first glimpse of my wife's smile as if she didn't have a single concern in the world. The summers Jake spent running along the beach. The nights when the world was 1,000 miles away. Now, those memories were history. Opened my mouth in an attempt to speak. There were no words. Dad, Jake said, leaning against the doorway, hands buried in pockets, not wanting me to see his face. You two okay? I nodded slowly, but nothing was okay, since what Jake did not know, and none of us did, was that this house was hiding a secret, one that would shatter the very roots of our lives. This began years ago, before Jake was even born. My wife and me, back then, were young, crazy, and ridiculously convinced that we controlled our own destiny. We stumbled upon a house on a whim, a small beach fixer-upper, abandoned and overlooked by all. Most folks just drove on by without so much as giving it a sideways glance. But me, I saw it. I saw what it could be. It was on the first night we spent in the house when we uncovered it. A secret room hidden cleverly behind the pantry. At the beginning, we just laughed about it, said it was our secret den. But things moved quickly, and we understood it wasn't just a room. There were files, letters from the past, pictures of people we never knew, of places we'd never heard of. We didn't confide in anyone, not the cops, not friends, not our families either. We were far too young to grasp what it meant, far too innocent to join the pieces together in our minds. But we made a pact. This house, everything in it, is our secret. Years went by. Jake grew up digging in the sand, none the wiser to the fact that the walls surrounding him retained secrets of the past. In our own life, we went through our years in a quiet and tentative manner, ever mindful of the fact that somewhere someone might be jealous of what we had learned. But then came the day when Jake realized he was able to handle more responsibility than what he was truly able to handle. He got his first real job, a place of his own, and made his own decisions without asking. This was to be expected, or at least it was supposed to be. However, the sale of the beach house was taking it too far. The rest of this day was spent by me in silence, pretending to work on my home office paperwork, while Jake went out, no doubt appeased by the thought that he had pulled one over on me. Meanwhile, I was mentally reliving the event, weighing my options for handling it. Attack? Anger? Fear? Before I could make a decision, my cell phone vibrated. It was an unknown number. I answered nervously. Is this Mr. Thompson? The voice asked, with the same deliberate slowness. Yes, I replied, my gut clenching. You don't know me, but you need to stop your son. Click. Just like that, I realized the past has come back for us. Someone else knows about the beach house, knows about the secret inside. Now, because of Jake's foolish behavior, it seemed that we are in serious trouble. I waited for his return that evening, pacing the living room, making certain that all doors were locked. Each groan of the house was like a warning. Each blast of wind against the sliding doors was like a signal that something is on its way. When Jake finally appeared, his face beaming with pride as if he has achieved some monumental task, I didn't yell at him. I didn't scold him either. All I did was stare. Dad, he said, a little bit of pride creeping into his voice. Tomorrow it's over. The beach house is sold. Finally, we never have to think about that place again. I was tempted to scream, to shake him until he realized the seriousness of what he had done. But I chose to sit instead, to remain composed, because to act on emotion in this case will just make everything worse. Jake, I said slowly, do you know what you just sold? His smile faltered. Of course I do. The beach house. You never even go there anymore. It's just a property. I leaned in. Our eyes met. You sold more than property. You sold the past, the secrets, and you have no idea what's coming tomorrow. The house was still by midnight. Jake was asleep in his room, unaware of what was happening. I couldn't sleep, however. I paced through every room in the house, running my hands along walls, furniture, and corners where darkness gathered. I knew it. This house was full of history, half-words, and danger. I was in the secret room, the one behind the pantry. Dust coated the documents, the photographs, the letters. I hadn't handled them in a long time, but tonight I had no choice but to. I had to learn what exactly Jake had let loose. And as I sifted through the papers, I came to a chilling realization that someone had been eavesdropping. Someone had always been eavesdropping. And now, thanks to Jake's foolish decision, the trap had been sprung. Morning arrived in an unsettling sense of calm. The sun rose over the ocean, coloring the sky with hues of gold and red. Birds chirped, waves crashed, and the world was living its own day, oblivious to what was about to transpire. It wasn't the same inside of me. A storm was brewing. It would tear everything apart by lunchtime, especially Jake. The light streaming into the living room was gold and full of innocence, but inside, our house was weighed down, as if it was holding its breath. There were songbirds outside. There were waves hitting the shore. Everything was normal. That is, with the exception of the feeling of impending doom in my stomach. I hadn't slept, still exploring the secret room that night, while letters, photographs, and yellowed papers from strangers long dead in the dust stare back at me. Their very presence a message, a warning in itself that implied observation, implication of waiting, and now, because of Jake, the trap was closing in on me. He came down the stairs maybe 8 o'clock, cheerful and none the wiser, humming a theme song from some TV show I'd never watched. Just the carelessness of it chilled my blood. He didn't know. The beach house wasn't just a house. It was a danger zone, a secret too big for any one person to keep. He just handed the key to whoever had been waiting in the wings all these years. "Morning, Dad," he said. "Coffee." I nodded my head in affirmation. "I'm right here with you." I tried to reassure him, but my voice stayed steady. I wouldn't let him see my fear. Not yet. Fear would make him panic. Panic would make him reckless. And recklessness would cost him everything. "Jake," I repeated slowly, placing a hand on his shoulder. "Do you know anyone who might be interested in this property?" He scowled. "What are you talking about? It's nothing but a piece of property, Dad." No one cares. I tried to force a smile, but had a racing mind. Some people care, son. Some people care a lot. He shrugged and began pouring coffee into his cup. I suppose we'll find out tomorrow. And in that, I realized something terrible. He had no clue what tomorrow had in mind, and it wouldn't be paperwork or finances. Tomorrow would be survival. The day passed slowly. I did my best to carry on as if nothing would matter, but my gaze kept drifting toward the phone, the windows, and every shadow in the house. By midday, the anguish became unbearable. I knew I had to go down to the town office, the place where all sales of property were registered. I had to find out exactly what Jake had accomplished, and if there was any way of preventing the sale before the trap closed. I drove slowly. The ocean wind was whipping at the car, as if trying to signal me. The streets were empty. It was as if the town was peaceful and almost unreal. But I knew better. It was the quiet places that held the darkest secrets. At the office, I spoke to the office clerk, an elderly woman with very keen eyes and an even keener tongue. "Mr. Thompson, your son?" she asked, looking over her glasses. "Yes, the transfer is final," continued the bureaucrat. "There's nothing that you can do about it at this point. The new owners will take possession of the house tomorrow morning." My heart sank. I had been hoping for a delay, a mistake, a loophole somewhere. But no, this was it. The sale was finished. Our house, our past, our secret room, it was out of our hands. And then I noticed a name, a single name in the files, a name that I had not expected, but one that made my blood run cold. I whispered the name aloud. "Monroe?" The clerk nodded. "Yes, Monroe Properties. They've been purchasing abandoned houses on the coast all across the county. People say they're investors, but, well, people also say strange things. Strange things. Dangerous things. That was all I needed to hear. I left the office, my mind reeling. I had to warn Jake. But how do you warn someone of the danger when they don't even understand what's at risk? Back in our house, Jake was unloading the boxes into the car when I called out to him to get inside. "Jake," I said firmly, "we need to talk." He leaned on the doorframe, cocky. "What about Dad? The sale? Don't worry. It's through. We're through." I shook my head. "No, Jake, you can't understand. The purchasers of the house. They're not normal purchasers. They're dangerous. And they know about the secret." His eyes narrowed. "What secret?" I breathed deeply. Careful words are what I had to use. One wrong word, one wrong reaction, and I could frighten him, or worse, get him to do something stupid. The house. It's not just a house. There's something inside, something we kept hidden for decades. And now, because you sold it, it's out there. They know. Jake laughed, a nervous laugh that didn't make it to his eyes. "Dad, come on. You're making this sound like a movie. Who cares? We're just selling a house. It's not the end of the world." NikeFreeRunSalonDepot.net. I latched onto his arm, squatting down, speaking firmly, but firmly too through gritted teeth. "No, Jake, you just don't understand. By tomorrow morning, it'll be Armageddon not just for you, but for all of us." He looked at me for a long time, trying to read my expression, trying to make out if I was joking or insane. But that moment of pause was enough to establish the truth of my fear. He was not yet ready. He was not ready for the truth, for the risk, for the coming events. And then it dawned on me, if he couldn't handle it, then I would have to handle it alone. I spent the remaining afternoon preparing for it. I went back to the secret room, sorting the letters, the documents, the photographs. Each piece was a story of betrayal, of greed, of people who had simply ceased to exist because they had stumbled upon the wrong secret. And then I understood a terrifying fact. Monroe knew exactly what was hidden within the house. They'd been watching, perhaps for decades, until Jake handed it over to them on a silver platter. The evening drew in, and I began to feel my first glimmer of fear. Not for me. I'm an old man, and I've been through tough times before. But for Jake, for what might tomorrow hold. The wind increased, howling through the eaves. Shadows spread across the walls. I couldn't shake the sense of being observed, just out of sight, waiting for darkness to fall. I went to check the windows, the doors, every lock in sight, and then I saw it, a movement against the edge of the property line. It was only a shadow, almost imperceptible, but my heart was pounding. Jake was inside. He wasn't paying any attention. His eyes were glued to his phone. Even then, he wouldn't have listened to me. He wouldn't have listened even if I had told him to be careful. I whispered a prayer instead and prepared for the storm. I lay awake that night. I was in the living room, watching the ocean, listening to the sound of the surf. I heard the sound of every footstep in the house, the whisper of the wind. My mind was racing with the possibilities. How would Monroe react to the revelation of their secret? Would they come quietly or with guns blazing? And could we effectively defend ourselves? Or had it all been hopeless in the beginning by Jake's plan to choose me, to draw their interest in me? Around midnight, there was a knock on the door. It was soft, polite, but sure. I froze. Another knock. I made my way slowly, hesitantly, towards the door. Nothing was visible through the peephole. There was neither form nor outline, only darkness, empty darkness, night. But then, a folded envelope appeared under the door. I picked it up. The writing was not my own. Elegant, deliberate letters. I opened it. It contained a single phrase. Everything will change by morning. You can't stop what's coming. I dropped the letter. My hands were shaking. This was not just theory anymore. This was proof. Monroe knew. They knew what was going on, and tomorrow would break Jake unless I did something. I spent the remainder of the night working on traps, contingency plans, and escape routes. Each nook and cranny of the house, each lock, each possible exit was considered. I had no idea what they might be able to do, but one thing was for sure. No one else could be counted on. Jake was too gullible, too full of confidence. It was up to me to keep him safe. Yet, as I settled in to catch a few moments of precious sleep, I knew the truth. No preparation could ever be adequate. However, by dawn, history would collide with the present. By dawn, the truth about the beach house would finally call for repayment. Furthermore, by dawn, everything that we knew, everything Jake believed he understood, would be history. The sun rose slowly in the morning, almost in a taunting manner. Outside, the sea was a mass of gold and silver hues, the waves gently pounding the surface of the land. There was chirping of birds, a clear indication of a world that had no clue about the impending mayhem. But not me. I had a clue the entire night. It had been there in the creaks of the house, in the wind, in a sense of danger beyond words. Jake was still asleep, far too confident in himself, far too naive about the storm that was about to hit him. He was still sleeping. His eyes were closed, and it was as though nothing in the world had disturbed his peaceful life. Yet in a matter of hours, nothing in this life will remain recognizable. I whispered a warning to the empty room. You have no idea what's coming, son. No idea at all. Breakfast was an anxious time. I made coffee, toast, and eggs. Jake barely acknowledged me, engrossed in scrolling through his cell phone, laughing at some video he thought was hilarious. I attempted to have some small talk and sow seeds of warning. Jake, I said carefully, people may come around today regarding the beach house. These new buyers, they aren't like normal buyers. I explained. Dad, you're blowing this out of proportion. Jake chuckled, shaking his head. It's just property. They want the deed. That's it. Nothing to be afraid of. I didn't say a thing. There was no point in words, and panic only made matters worse. I simply observed, calculating and preparing. Every moment was crucial to me. Mid-morning, I spotted activity outside. This time it was more than shadow. A black SUV pulled up near the boundary of the property, partly obscured by the high dunes. Two men emerged. They were clad in black, wearing sunglasses despite the clouds overhead. Their presence seemed threatening. I took a step closer to the window. Monroe agents. There was no doubt about that. Their body language, their search of the house and property, their stealthy professionalism. It was the same stuff I had observed in pictures, in historical files that had been tucked away in the secret room. These men were not here to make a gesture of friendship. Jake had unintentionally delivered whatever they wanted, and they would take it by whatever means necessary. I quickly moved, pulling Jake away. We have to get out of here. Now, I said. He looked up in surprise. Go? Where? Dad, it's just them buying a house. I don't understand what you're talking about. No, son. They know. They know about the secret. We don't have time to argue. Grab a bag. Take what you can. We leave now. I grabbed his arm. For the first time, I saw a flicker of panic in his eyes. The confident, cocky kid was replaced by one who suddenly realized that he wasn't invincible. We packed up quickly. Essential files. A few items of clothing, nothing non-essential. All the noises outside, gravel beneath tires, the rush of the sea air, forced me to be alert and listen for the opening salvo. By the time we made it to the car, the agents were closing in. They weren't hurrying. Not yet anyway. They did have patience. The kind of patience that came with knowing they would always get what they wanted. I turned on the engine. Jake was messing with his seatbelt, so I barked at him, "Hurry!" We drove slowly down the coast road, eyeing the house. I didn't look back. I didn't want them to realize that we were leaving, but my brain was racing. Monroe would know soon enough. They always did. I was halfway to town when my mobile phone buzzed. It was an unknown number. I hesitated for a moment. You can't escape from us, Mr. Thompson. The house belongs to us now. The secret within it belongs to us. And as for you, you and your son are in the way, a deep, calm, and measured voice said. Click. Dad, what does it mean? Jake looked at me, his face pale. Swallowing hard, I said, that means it's not just us running from buyers. We're running from people who will kill us for what's in that house. The next hour passed through narrow side roads in an attempt to remain inconspicuous. Nonetheless, the feeling of being hunted was smothering. Each approaching vehicle and every other shadow along the side of the road made my heart miss a beat. Monroe wasn't simply tracking us. They were directing every action. We made it to a small, deserted warehouse on the edge of town by lunch. It wasn't much, just 4 walls and a roof, but would do the trick as far as cover and a place to plan. I locked the doors, secured the windows, and established the perimeter. Jake was in the corner, quiet, shaking. I touched his shoulder. Listen to me, I said. You need to keep your wits. Panic will get you killed. He nodded, swallowing hard. Dad, why didn't you tell me that before? I looked at him, tired and old but determined. Because you weren't ready. And now there's no choice. We fight or we lose everything. And I don't mean money. The rest of the afternoon was quiet and tense. I started to peruse the papers that we had smuggled out of the secret room, looking for anything that could possibly be used as leverage against Monroe. There were codes, some addresses, and the names of men long dead, but some of the men might be alive, and they could help us. I mentally made a list. Suddenly, a loud bang reverberated through the warehouse. I yanked Jake down to the floor. Footsteps. Heavy, purposeful, getting closer. The first agent had tracked us down. Carefully, he entered with gun in hand. His eyes locked on us. "Mr. Thompson?" He spoke icily. "Yes," I said, getting my feet. "You want something? Take it, but leave my son out of this." He smiled faintly, but it didn't reach his eyes. "We want what's ours. The house, the paperwork, the secret, and we'll get it by any means necessary." Jake whimpered behind me. "Dad." I whispered back, "Stay calm. Follow my lead." The agent stepped closer. I noticed his bag. It was big and black. He was not just coming to discuss the situation. He brought equipment, hardware and explosives. I thought quickly. We had no time. I had to make a move. I reached for a metal pipe in the corner and swung it. He dodged, but not quick enough. It shocked him enough for us to make a run for it. Jake tagged along as we sprinted for the back exit. Outside, the world was gray, menacing. Monroe had established a perimeter. Cars were blocking the road. Men were moving in a calculated way, closing off escape routes. It was a trap. We headed toward the woods, thick and black. Branches scratched at our faces. Roots tried to trip us up, but we didn't stop running. I could hear shouted orders behind us, agents calling for backup. It dawned on me that by the time we got to the deeper forest, Monroe had thought ahead. This group had their eyes everywhere. Furthermore, the forest, which would serve as our hiding place, became their playground too. The night fell, and we discovered clearing. I leaned against the trunk of a tree, panting for air. Jake dropped next to me, shivering. "They'll find us, Dad," he whispered. "I know," I replied, scanning the dark. "But we'll make them pay for every step. We're not going down quietly." I turned to Jake, and he was looking at me with fear and determination in his eyes. "Listen, there's more to the secret than what you think. And if Monroe gets it, it'll not only ruin us, they'll ruin everybody we know." Hours dragged by. Each sound, no matter how small, a twig snapping, a leaf rustling, the hum of a distant car, made my heart leap. I set up traps for us, using whatever materials I could scrounge up, wires, sticks, anything that might warn us of approaching danger. Each shadow was alive. Each sound was purposeful. Monroe didn't want the secret. They wanted us. It was 2 a.m. movement. Figures coming out of the trees, quiet, fatal, closing in around us. My heart was racing, but I did not blink. It was a situation impossible to prepare for. This was one of them. Jake latched onto my hand. "Dad, what are we going to do?" "We fight, and we survive. Follow me exactly. Don't think. Don't hesitate." I whispered. The first blow came seconds after. A burst of light, a bellowed cry, and we were on our feet. I swung, dodged, and struck back as hard as I could. These agents of Monroe's were well-trained, efficient, and cruel, but desperation is strength. The night descended into chaos, running and hiding, attacking and retreating. The forest was a battleground, and we were the unexpected foe. Each passing moment meant survival. Each error meant loss of life. By dawn, they were lost to us. Temporarily, beaten, battered, exhausted, we hid in the shadows. "Dad." "We survived," Jake exclaimed, his eyes fixed on me. I nodded, though I didn't feel like celebrating. For now, but this is just the beginning. Monroe will regroup, and tomorrow will be worse. They'll come for the secret, and for us. I knew he was right. The battle was underway. And unless we acted quickly, the light of morning would bring devastation beyond any kind of fear we'd yet known. The first light of the sun pierced through the forest with dark strokes of shadows. Jake and I were huddled in the bushes, our muscles burning with pain from the previous night's battle. Each tree we had traversed and each leaf we had trodden underfoot seemed to hum with the presence of Monroe's men. There was nothing that proclaimed their presence as loudly as their silence. I glanced at Jake. His white, pinched face showed fear, as well as a glimmer of something else, curiosity, the beginnings of understanding. He was finally realizing that the world our lives took place in was much, much larger, as well as much, much darker than he had any idea. Jake, I whispered, what you are about to see, what you are about to understand, changes everything. The beach house wasn't just a home. It was a key to something decades in the making. He swallowed hard, nodding. I'm ready, Dad. I think. We made our way through the forest, trying not to make our presence obvious. Monroe certainly expected us to head for the highways. But I remembered another route that I had discovered as a youthful wanderer along the coast. Before long, we came to the top of the bluffs that overlooked the old pier. The sea raged below us, pounding against the rocks like gun salutes. It was breathtaking, treacherous. I motioned for Jake to come with me down a small path that would lead us to a hidden cave on the coast. Only those familiar with the terrain for so many years would be able to discover it. In the cave, it was cool, damp, and hushed. In the corner of this cave, behind the jagged boulders, was the wooden chest. It was worn, covered with algae yet locked fast. This, I knelt in front of it and continued, is what Monroe wants. And this is what your reckless choice may have endangered. Jake stared at me, confused. It's just a chest, Dad. What's so special about it? I slowly shook my head. It's more than a chest. It has all the information. Names, addresses, accounts, proof of things that would take down important men. Men who will kill to keep it secret. And now, you've handed it over to them. We opened the trunk with care. The trunk was full of bundles of paperwork, photographs, and a number of leather-bound journals. These things were marked with precision some several decades back. Messages from mysterious writers, photographs of clandestine gatherings, encoded text, all signs of a hidden organization that had shaped this coastline for many years. Jake leaned in, surveying the documents. His eyes widened in question. Dad, this is huge. I grasped his shoulder to steady him. You still don't. These people, Monroe. I began. They have based their whole power structure on this. And now that it's out, they'll do whatever it takes to get it back. And then a sound came from outside the cave that made us both freeze in our tracks. It was the sound of footsteps, slow, deliberate, and coming closer and closer. Monroe had found us. They had all the patience, strategy, and determination in the world. Jake, I whispered, we don't have time. We must move. I said, we snatched the chest and did the best we could secure it. The route back to the forest was perilous, but we had no choice. Agents were gathered outside, 5 of them, then 10, as if shadows come alive from the trees. Monroe had escalated. They weren't testing us anymore. They were attacking. The chase was vicious. We were being ripped by branches and sucked by roots that threatened to bring us down, but we were running as hard as we could. Monroe's voices were ringing out through the earpieces. They were organized and efficient and completely ruthless. We came to a narrow gorge. Far below us lay the ocean. There was no way ahead. I stopped and panted. Jake's eyes met mine. He panicked. Dad, what do we do? I surveyed the gorge, and then my eyes flicked to the chest. There was only one thing to do. We hold the chest. We make a stand, and we fight smart. We established our defense position near the rocks. Utilizing the geography to our advantage, we barricaded ourselves. As we braced ourselves for an imminent encounter, Monroe drew near in flanking positions. Remember all the things I've taught you, I whispered to Jake. Keep low, keep quiet, and follow me. One false move, and it's all finished. The first agent came towards us, so we had to be cautious. I picked up a rock that was just lying around and threw it aside. Jake reacted instinctively and started to move the rocks in front of us. The agent stumbled. This was just what we needed. The battle heightened rapidly. The agent from Monroe's side pushed hard, but we had terrain, surprise, and adrenaline working in our favor. We dodged, ducked, and defended, using rocks, sticks, or anything that would stop a bullet from hitting us in a fatal way. Every action, every moment counted. Jake finally grasped how serious it was. He understood that the beach house secret was not only important, it was dangerous. People would kill for it. He was right in the middle of it all. Dad, I understand, he whispered through the fight. I get it now. This isn't just about money. It's about survival. I nodded, a combination of both fear and pride. Exactly. We survived or we died trying. The hours dragged on. The skirmish dwindled as each side retreated to regroup. We took shelter in a hidden nook, trying to catch our breath. I opened the chest enough to check the files inside. Each sheet of paper verified the very thing I feared. The reach Monroe had, the advantages he enjoyed, as well as the knowledge of all our movements. We were outnumbered, outgunned, but not beaten. Night began to fall once again. We made use of the darkness, moving undetected through the forest, keeping the chest hidden. The roar of the ocean covered our tracks, and darkness became our ally. Still, I knew that Monroe wouldn't stop. None of them ever did. By midnight, we had arrived at an isolated lighthouse, which was abandoned. It was a relic of a bygone age, looming tall against the pounding waves. It was secure, defensible, and out of sight. We entered it cautiously, securing the interior. Jake sat next to me, the weariness evident on his face. Dad, how am I going to get through this? They're everywhere. I reached out and put my hand on his shoulder. We survive because we must, and because we know more than they do. We know the chest exists. They do, but they do not know what is in it. This is our strength, our hope, but we must be better than they think. His fear was replaced by determination as he nodded his head in acceptance. I'm ready, Dad. I won't. I smiled thinly, though my heart was laden with sorrow. I know, boy, and I'll not let you down either. Tonight, however, we sleep for tomorrow. Monroe takes the final battle. The rest of the night was silent vigilance. We listened for anything. An owl hoot, a wind gust, the hum of engines from the distant airport. We rotated watches, safeguarding the chest, plotting the course of action for later. As dawn approached, we knew that hiding was no longer an option. Monroe would track us down. They always did. Just as the first light of dawn reached the lighthouse, I turned to Jake. His skin was pale, but his eyes were aglow with understanding. He had known the peril, the risk, and the truth of what it meant for the beach house secret. He was ready now. Jake, I said low but direct, today we fight. Today we finish what we began all those years ago. Monroe doesn't understand this. Not today. Not ever. He nodded, clutching the chest hard. Let's finish this once and for all, Dad. I smiled, grim and determined. Once and for all, I said. The lighthouse loomed like a sentinel against the coming dawn. The outline of the tower was etched against the pounding waves. The wind whipped through the rocky cliffs below, bringing with it the salt of the sea and the menace of danger. Jake and I sat in the top level of the tower, the chest between us. The burden of the secret weighed upon both our shoulders. Each groan of the tower and each cry of the wind served as a reminder that the final battle was close at hand. Jake's hands were shaking as he grasped the chest. Dad, it's almost over, right? We can make it past this. I looked at him, tired, bruised, battle-worn, but resolute. "Son," I said, "we survive because we must. But Monroe doesn't quit. Ever. Today. Today we're going to end this one way or another." I breathed deeply, feeling the weight of the situation. At this point, it was no longer just a house, a chest of treasures, or pieces of paper. It was life, death, and all the in-betweens. And all the months of running, hiding, and surviving culminated in this moment. The morning came, and the light was pale on the shore. But the ocean was smooth and deceptive of the turmoil to come. We heard them before we saw them, the droning of engines, the purring of tires on gravel. Monroe had encircled the lighthouse. They were meticulous, coordinated, and lethal, but we had one thing they did not. Knowledge, preparation, and the desperation of hope turned to laser-sharp purpose. I leaned on Jake. "Listen, remember all the things I taught you. Every trick, every motion, every diversion. You make one wrong move, it's all over. Got it?" He nodded, his eyes wide open but determined. "I understand, Dad. I'm ready." I smiled faintly. "Good. Well, let's get this over with." I led the way, laying traps down at the bottom of the lighthouse. Wires, tripwires, alarm systems. Monroe's men would come in a calculated manner, but one miscalculation would alert us. Jake was right behind me, catching on quickly and using all the techniques I had taught him. It's not just a matter of survival. It's an act of war. However, by mid-morning, the first agents arrived at the base. I watched them from outside to the window, moving in perfect sync. 5 men, checking doors, searching around rocks, looking for where they might gain entry. They had no idea what they might be walking into. "Wait for my signal," I whispered to Jake. "Then distract them, move quickly, and get the chest." The first encounter was unexpected. I threw a rock to the side, and the sound got the agent's attention. One of the agents shifted his weight, and I took advantage of the distraction and closed the trap I'd made by slamming the weight, which knocked the agent off balance. This resulted in immediate chaos. The battle was vicious, almost relentless. Monroe's agents were well-trained, expert, and pitiless. But in our situation, desperation was our source of power, our resourcefulness, our unpredictability. Jake was an extraordinary kid. I observed him moving efficiently, behaving in a manner unlike most kids his age. Fear motivated him, to be sure, but his purpose also propelled him. He had developed in short order into a being who could survive. As the fight raged, I understood that Monroe wasn't only after the chest, but the knowledge that was inside. That chest was full of secrets that stretched back decades, revealing those who were powerful, who made illegal deals, who committed crimes. They would kill, cheat, and destroy anyone who got in their way. I yelled above the din at Jake, "Hold the chest tight. It's not just paper, it's leverage." He nodded, clutching it in his hand as we dodged and struck back at the agents. Each blow, each move, each pulse seemed magnified. We worked in perfect synchrony. Just as things were getting amped up, a big surprise came through. One of the agents, a man I knew from the classified files, spoke up. "You can't keep hiding things, Thompson. This property belongs to Monroe. Everything inside belongs to us." I stood frozen in shock. There was a spark of recognition that flashed like a lightning bolt in my brain. This guy was a part of the network that my team has documented for so many decades. This guy has managed so many deals, so many vanishings, so many backstabbing acts. And yet, here I was right in front of that guy. I gritted my teeth. "No, you own nothing. You don't know the whole story." The agent smirked with the gun upraised. "We know enough, and soon you will know what it means to resist Monroe." The battle raged on. Bullets bounced off the walls. Debris rained down from the lighthouse rafters, and the wind slammed through the broken windows. Me and Jake played our angles well, setting traps for the agents, working the environment to our advantage. Each passing second was a struggle for survival. An agent made a rush toward the chest. I intercepted him, wrestling him down and slammed him into the wall. The chest was still safe. Jake further fortified the barricade by throwing debris to hold off the reinforcements. The hours flew by in a haze of violence, tactical maneuvering, and fatigue. But in the midst of it all, one thing struck me as interesting. Monroe was tiring. Their sense of patience was slowly being replaced by anger. They had misinterpreted us, misunderstood the relationship between the father and the son. It had been built upon a foundation of trust over the years, and the fire of adversity had simply tempered it. Late afternoon brought a shift in the momentum of battle. We had gained control over the lighthouse, set several agents into traps, and disrupted their coordination. Still, I realized this was not the end. The leaders of Monroe would not rest until they possessed the chest. I turned to Jake. Listen, son, there's something you have to understand. The chest, the secret, it's bigger than we are. Bigger than the fight we're in now. If we make it out alive, that's what you have to protect it from more than anything in the world. Jake held my gaze, sweat and blood covering his face, his eyes blazing. I get it, Dad. I'll protect it, no matter what. And then the final wave came. A dozen more agents came, their movement precision machine with terror. I saw we couldn't hold out for long. We hadn't moved the chest. We had to come up with an escape plan. Follow me. Now! I shouted at Jake. We went down the spiral stairs. Bullets ricocheted everywhere. Debris littered the stairs. The lighthouse trembled as a result. There was a roaring sound on the outside. It was the ocean. It was as if the ocean was a furious animal. I noticed a hidden passage from the cliff. It had been ages since I found the passage when my wife and I went exploring. Our showdown began at the foot of the cliff. Monroe's agents lined the way, but we at least had knowledge and terrain on our side. Rocks, irregular terrain, and darkness became our weaponry. I fought as hard as I could, while Jake defended the box, dealing perfectly, with a bravery I never believed he possessed. The fight was brutal. Time felt like minutes. Minutes felt like seconds. Fatigue bit at us, but we had no choice. Winning meant living. Losing meant death, or worse. Then the IT happened. The leader, the man I had picked out in the documents, came forward, gun firing directly at Jake. Slow motion kicked in. I pushed myself in front of Jake, deflecting the blow with a metal rod I had picked out of the debris. The bullet ricocheted, but this near miss left both of us shaken. I turned to Jake. Run. Take the chest. Get to the passageway. He paused, then took off running, the chest in his grasp. I covered him, repelling the agents still in the way. The cliff face shook beneath the turmoil, the waves below boiling in fury. But there was no going back. We appeared on the beach, battered and bruised, but alive. Jake led the way, with the chest clutched in his arms. I held back momentarily, ensuring that Monroe's troops were held at bay, giving him the crucial seconds. Finally, I chased after him on a sprint, tired, battered, and pushed to my limits. We finally arrived at a hidden area where a chest might be concealed. I dropped to my knees, panting heavily, gazing at my son. You did it, I whispered. We survived. His eyes locked with mine. His chest was rising and falling. We did, Dad. We actually did it. We hid the chest away safely, making sure that it wouldn't be discovered except by us. But as soon as the sun went below the horizon and colored the sky orange and red, I realized that the truth was that the secret of the beach house wasn't documents and evidence alone. It was the strength and the unity that had been created in the face of impossible situations. Monroe would regroup. They would search. They would come back. For the moment we had lived. Jake asked me, "Dad, what happens next?" I smiled faintly, placing a hand on his shoulder. "Next, son, we live. We protect what matters. And we remember that some secrets are worth fighting for, no matter what it costs." Crashed the waves on the shoreline, unmindful and ceaseless. Behind us stood the lighthouse, a silent observer to the tumult we had weathered. And as the night fell, I was certain of one thing only, that, no matter what happened next, we had proved that bravery, strategy, and father-son loyalty could defeat even the strongest enemies in combat. My father said, smiling at me in pride, "The beach house secret had been preserved, and so had we." My father said, smiling back at me in happiness, "That's how the beach house secret nearly ruined everything. But in the end, it was bravery, strategy, and father-son loyalty that saved us all." Well, if this story has kept you on the edge of your seat, make sure to click that like button. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel for even more crazy stories that will shock, inspire, and make you question everything. Response below. If you were in Jake's shoes, do you think that you would have survived? I would like to hear from you. Remember, though, that some secrets are worth fighting for. Some secrets are worth dying for. And some, well, you'll just have to watch the next story to see what happens then. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next story. Stay safe and stay alert.